name is Susan Hewitt.
My name is Andy Hewitt.
My spiritual journey started when I was young, and it's sort of in two parts. The early years, from early childhood through about age 16, and then 16 right up through now. And my parents thought it was really important for us to go to Sunday school and church every week. And so we grew up knowing about Jesus and worshiping him. And I could feel him and his presence in my life as a child very much. When I was 16, my older sister went away to college. And she came back. She had gotten involved with an organization called Campus Crusade for Christ, which is now called Cru. And she came back, and one day she said, you really need to invite Jesus into your heart and accept him as your Lord and Savior. And that perplexed me a little bit, because I felt that I'd had a relationship with the Lord in my childhood and growing up, and I did pray. But I thought about it for a while and realized that she had the same background I had, and she was telling me there was something more that I could have in relationship to God. And I felt that if there was more that I could have in my life of God, I wanted that. The first part of my life was about Jesus loving me. And then when I received him as my Savior, it was about me being cleansed, forgiven for my sins, and me allowing him to come in and be Lord of my life. Throughout the years, I'm so thankful that he is in my life, and to be able to see him transforming me. Sometimes that's hard, sometimes that's victorious, sometimes it's both. I love our God. I love who he is. I love his righteousness, his goodness, his mercy, his love, and the fact that there is so much more of that than we could ever imagine. And I'm thankful that I have a God who is goodness and truth and righteousness.
I grew up in commuting distance of New York City. My dad worked in the city. We went to the Episcopal Church pretty regularly. I was confirmed in it when I was 12. I still have a hairbrush. I don't know why, but I still have my hairbrush from that I was given. You know, as they say, I'll never part with it. And it was interesting because my parents were not believers, okay? But we did things like read Psalms before bedtime when I was young. You know, I don't know where they got that idea, but so between going and being part of Sunday school and being somewhat familiar with the Bible, I had a lot of, I'll call it head knowledge growing up about Jesus, about what he did on the cross, but it was all just in my head. I mean, there was nothing going on in my heart whatsoever. My older sister, Louise, came home from college. She's 2 years older, and she was talking kind of funny about Jesus, you know. And I'm like, you know, what's up with her, you know? But it didn't really kind of hit me, you know, at that point. She invites me to go and hear an evangelist speak, and I'm like, that would be fun, you know, because I didn't have a high opinion of evangelists at that point, and I said, I can just go and mock this guy, you know. So on a Saturday night, and it was June 30th of 1973, we go to Red Rocks Park, which overlooks the city. I can truly say, you know, it's the equivalent of a black-white, day-night experience for me. It was God he just sort of electrified. He zapped my heart that night, is all I can say. So much that I had known in my head finally sort of was exposed to my heart, that I was a sinner, that I needed a Savior, and that Jesus died for me, not just mankind, not just some amorphous sort of love, but no, he loved me in particular. A group of Christians, believers in our Episcopal Church, that sort of took me under their wing that summer and kind of helped me kind of get my feet as a Christian. One of those groups, campus ambassadors. The third week into that freshman year, I go one night and I meet a young woman. Her name was Sandy, and come to find out by Christmas time we were dating, and by the middle of spring semester we were engaged. Okay. Don't know if we were taking it fast or slow, but that's what happened. And so we kind of announced that to our parents. It's like, we want to get married, and they were like, not so fast. Wait until you graduate. And we said, wait until you graduate. Okay, we can do that. We can't, we didn't want to, but we were going to do it. And so we waited until we graduated, probably about 6 hours. But we graduated in the morning and got married that evening.
Wow.
It worked out really well. It was not hard.
Everybody was there.
Everyone was there. We other than that, we had a pretty boring first 28 or 25 years or so. We had raised 4 kids, and moved around Ohio, as banking was kind of a tough place. All these mergers were making my job hard to hold on to, and I'd have to keep jumping around to keep having a job. By 2002, Sandy was starting to complain about just being wiped out every night by 8:30, and we'd go for walks, and she'd be huffing and puffing, and I wouldn't be working that hard, and I'm like, well, I'm in good shape, and she was like, yeah, but this is not just that, and so her primary care doctor was pretty smart, and she looked at her and said, you need to see a neurologist. And we're like, well, okay, what does that mean? Well, it took a few months to figure it out, but it turned out to be Lou Gehrig's disease. And Lou Gehrig's disease is a fatal disease. She was 46 years old at that point, had always taken care of herself, was in good health, and yet there we were facing this, and it was quite honestly, for 3 months or so, the two of us were really sort of a bit adrift emotionally and spiritually. We were like, what is this? What does this mean? And she didn't get spared the disease at all. It wasn't like he said, oh, I'll just keep anything from happening to you. She followed the track that you follow with that disease. The thing, as terrible as it was, the disease itself, it was that 3 years that she had between diagnosis and dying in 2005 was also, I'm going to say, just about the most amazing time we had spiritually that I can describe. We had grown spiritually over the 25 years prior. Nothing dramatic, I wouldn't say. I can't say I'm particularly proud of it necessarily. But that period, that 3 years, was just a time when we were like totally at God's feet and saying, how do we literally get through this next day? Now that you're declining further and further and further and further, you know, what do we have to do to trust you and glorify you and give thanks to you? And the greatest things was that her witness throughout this time, I mean, there was a point at which she needed 24/7 care. And so our house was sort of like a train station, you know, people coming and going all the time. Christians would come to minister to her. Well, she'd minister to them. They'd leave feeling blessed, even when she couldn't talk anymore, because her muscles in her mouth didn't work anymore. She was still able to, you know, really minister God's love and how much He cared for each one of us. One thing she insisted on of me was that I grieve but get remarried. In fact, she tried to set me up with one of the nurses. and I was like, no, you're not going to do that. You know, I'm not even going to think about it. So you just get that out of your head. About a year after she died, I went to my pastor and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. How does one date as a Christian? I haven't done this for 33 years, you know. And he didn't have a direct answer, but he did come back and say, I've been told that you should try eHarmony. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, use technology to find the woman that the Lord might have for me. I'm like, that just really is okay, but you know, here I am trusting in technology now too. All I can say is my prayer was God would bring a woman of God. That was my short and sweet prayer. I said I can add a lot of other characteristics or criteria, but I said probably they aren't that important really, but this is what's important, you know. So I signed up and immediately was like overwhelmed with how many women were sort of piling into my profile. It was like a little overwhelming. But Susan was there, and this is the truth.
I can't help. It's so funny that
it was. Well, I got to tell you that there's a vast imbalance. Okay, there are not very many guys, and there are lots of women, at least in that age bracket. Am I right?
It's true. There were that many.
Yeah. It was a little disconcerting. Anyway, Susan stood out pretty quickly, and so we took it pretty slowly.
On my end, I also in this time period found out I had breast cancer. So I was going through the process of radiation treatments and not really sure that this is what I should be doing. You know, I didn't know. I had a good prognosis, but it just seemed like it might be the wrong time to be doing this. Andy popped up with a request for communication, and I said to myself, oh, what harm can it do?
Yeah, those fatal words. I mean,
I needed to tell him right away because he had lost his spouse, and here I had a potentially very dangerous disease, and I did let him know that I was recovering, and told him I would understand if, you know, he didn't feel that he wanted to continue to pursue things. And he wrote back something that just amazed me. He said, "I'm just glad I learned how to be a caregiver." And that just said it all for me. For someone who had been through a very painful loss, to be able to say something like that, to me, I found amazing.
I think in dealing with Sandy's loss, for example, I learned that God doesn't necessarily give you the life that you expect or that even that you want. But no matter what he does give you, he's going to see you through it. And he's not going to leave you. And he never changes.
I was thinking today about the fact that when you're not in control, it's very frightening. And God says, perfect love casts out fear. So if you are placing your love for the Lord first, he lifts that fear. And he will go with you wherever you